Welcome to the Nomos series of interviews for International Women's Day 2022. Today we share stories with Andrea, an agile coach, and Candace, a senior developer, talented women with so much wisdom.
Andrea, very briefly, can you tell me about your past, where you were born, where you grew up, and a little bit about your family, please?
Yes, sure. So I was born and raised in Germany. Obviously grew up there, went to school, completed uni. Then I spent a year traveling in South America, moved to England, stayed there for 9 or 10 years. And then I moved to Australia, and obviously I'm still here. My family, so I've got 2 siblings. I'm the oldest. I've got a sister and a brother, both younger, both with partners, both with kids. And they all live pretty close together to my parents. So parents are minding both kids at the moment after school and during school holidays.
Thank you. Candace, can you tell me about where you were born, where you grew up, and a bit about your family, please?
I was born in Sydney and I grew up in Sydney. And my family background is, my father's actually from Malaysia, and his parents migrated from Fujian in China. And on my mother's side, my mum was born here in Sydney, and her mum was born in Macau, and her mum was born in Hong Kong. And then I think somewhere further back, we are from Canton, because that's the language that I was raised speaking.
And Andrea, which culture do you most identify with?
Which culture? It probably would be, it would just be German, just European. I know there is French background, and no, otherwise, yeah, just European.
And Candace?
I would say it's a mix between American, Australian, and Chinese.
Andrea, what kind of person were you as a child and a teenager?
I know I've said this before to you, I was a completely different person. As a child, I was very quiet. I rarely spoke. I was very timid, but always very interested in learning, reading. Like I was always in a corner, reading or doing something. And yeah, I had a very, very small circle of friends, kept to myself really. And that continued until well into my teens. I would say probably 17 was kind of a turning point where I started, be a bit more open, a bit more vocal. Otherwise, yeah, I was always a very shy kid.
Yeah, I think I always wanted to be around people, which was pretty easy in my house, I guess, because there's always people coming in and out of my house, and there was always a random relative staying with us at all times. Different people. Sometimes they showed up just, with a couple of days' notice. And I spent a lot of time with my neighbors who were in their probably the 60s or 70s at the time.
Who were some of your early female influences in terms of people you looked up to or you learned from? And these can be real people, these can be fictional, iconic people that you saw on TV and in books. Who are some of your influences? So
that would be, the first one I remember is a teacher I had, and I would have been in my teens. And she saw the good and the potential in everyone. And if you didn't quite get there, it was more like, you're not there yet, but I can see you can do it. So she was really encouraging and believing in people. That was standing out to me at the time. And then later in life, I had not so much friends, but colleagues, and especially older colleagues who were mentors to me in the way they treated people, in the way they carried themselves yeah, and that's still obviously ongoing.
Yeah. So growing up, I actually spent most of my time at my grandparents' place, and I think my maternal grandmother was my primary carer when I was growing up. Would drop us off to school, make us our lunches, pick us up from school, and then when I was old enough to, I guess, we would come through the garage, and then all my grandma's friends would be there, and so I was always hanging out with that crowd. And yeah, I think my grandma and all her friends were very early influences for me. It was mandatory to give each one a hug when I walked in the door. I learned a lot of just how to interact with people through them.
Thank you very much. This is warming my heart so much. So wholesome. What were your thoughts about work when you were younger? Did you know what you wanted to be and what you wanted to do?
I never knew what I wanted to be. I was the only kid that I remember that didn't want to be, what do people want to be, like a vet or like a work for the fire brigade, just the standard things. I couldn't see myself as anything. I just knew I wanted to travel and I wanted to socialize with people. That was all I had, and that was all throughout my childhood. What I thought about a job was, it was initially something to pick and then stick with for the rest of my life. So obviously choice had to be a good one. And yeah, that resulted in quite a bit of pressure, selecting what do I study, where do I learn, what school do I pick. So yeah, it was like I'm going to make the decision, and that's going to be my decision for life. That was my expectation.
I would say probably from the age of 9 or 10, it was, I wanted to be a doctor. And that continued on. I think I probably thought about that on a weekly or daily basis up until I got into medical school at the age of 23. Yeah. So I spent a lot of years thinking about it. I had the whole thing mapped out when I was about 10. I think I thought, okay, I'm going to spend 10 years working here in rural Australia, that I'm going to spend, I'm going to work in Africa, I'm going to work in South America. Well, I'm not a doctor, as you know now, but yeah, that's for a different time.
What are you passionate about personally and socially?
Personally, I'm still passionate about languages, foreign languages. I've always had a passion for that. It's something that I enjoy doing. It comes easy to me. And again, learning, self-development. Socially, I would say more and more into supporting others, especially women, or going down the line of, say, domestic violence, or even child abuse or childhood trauma, that kind of thing. So I can tell like that I'm feeling more and more strongly about it with every month, really, and that's only come about very recently. Yeah.
I'm very passionate about health in general, and I guess more specifically around illness and disease and public health, if I'm going to be, more specific about it. And then also very interested in what I can do with my tech skills or whatever other skills that I have to collaborate and be in partnership with historically oppressed groups wherever in the world.
As you know, intelligence takes many, many forms: physical intelligence, emotional intelligence, academic, psychological, lots of things, artistic intelligence. So my question is to you is, how do you express both creativity and these different types of intelligences in your life?
Yeah, wow, that's a real question to unpack, isn't it? So for me, you know, I think I've been coding since I was pretty young, like 9 years old. And it's just kind of always been a part of my life. I never thought, I mean, not that I didn't think you could get a job in it. It wasn't very popular at the time to have a job in it, but it's kind of been a staple way to get out that problem solving itch that I have. And then I think one thing that I've developed for a long time is my emotional intelligence. That's always been the most important thing for me, I think, innately. And I think about it every day. I practice getting better at it every day. And so one thing that I realized I hadn't developed was my understanding of the physical world. I think we were talking earlier about how I didn't notice that my housemate wore glasses. And I have a really, my visual memory is really lacking. And my understanding of physical space and, you know, sporting intelligence, as you say, physical intelligence, it's definitely an area where I'm lacking. So I picked up skateboarding last year because I do think pushing different facets, like it helps you to think in different ways and to relate to different people and their interests. And that for me is sort of my purpose in life, is to relate to the most amount of people that I can possibly relate to. That's what really gives me a sense of joy.
There's something, well, a term that I only came across this week, and it's linguistic intelligence, which I didn't even know existed. And I think that's the main one for me. As I touched on the foreign languages earlier, I've always enjoyed listening and speaking them. And I just love words, written or spoken. You can make me so happy with a well-written book. And like Candace just said, it just brings me joy. And another thing is the emotional intelligence aspect, which is, I'm still working on it. That's something I think I'm pretty good at it now, but definitely not used to be. So that's something I'm working on and enjoying as well. So those two would be for me.
Candace, what's working really well for you in your life right now?
Gee, really? Okay. I think expectation setting, actually. It's a new thing that I find quite confronting. I think I've swanned through a lot of my life with people sort of having expectations of me that I could meet, and never really needing to have a lot of hard conversations around not being able to meet their expectations, right? Or maybe me presenting in a certain way that they think I can achieve A, but really I know I can achieve B, because I'm a pretty realistic person, and I'm pretty good at estimating what I'm capable of today or tomorrow or this week. And yeah, it's just reduced a lot of stress from my life, being able to, learning and then being able to have these hard conversations. I think I'm letting go slowly of my want to be liked. And that's really hard because I think this is common for a lot of women, is like the need and the want to be liked a lot of the time. It's been pretty hard to let go of, but I realize I also don't need so much stress in my life. And I think those two are kind of linked in a way, like spending cycles doing things that make me more likable rather than actually reducing my stress in like noticeable ways?
I could probably link to what Candace just said about expectation setting and wanting to be liked. So I'm at a point now where I don't need to be liked. I would like to be liked, but if that's not the case, I don't have anything to prove anymore. So there's like a sense of calm that I've reached at this point. I don't need to prove anything anymore, and as long as it feels right or it sits well with me, that's all I go with.
Sorry, can I just add a comment to that? I've realized in really recent days that likability is something that comes and goes and is waning. One day someone likes me, and then the next day the same person doesn't like me, and whereas my self-respect and my integrity, if that takes a dip, that stays with me much longer, and I try to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Andrea, what advice would you give to your younger self?
What advice would I give to my younger self? I would say to trust myself more, not let anyone like either gaslight me or put like a seed of doubt in my head just because it's not the way they see it. And you can still accommodate that position. You don't have to like take it as your own. So that would be the major one. Just
It's okay to have an opinion. Maybe it's even good to have an opinion.
So many of the things that you're speaking, both of you, and in the earlier interview, these are things that young men do think about, but there comes this weird moment around 25 where men just stop thinking about this stuff. They just assume that their opinion is great and it needs to be expressed and it needs to be explained to women. Again, I've said this to at least Ollie. I've done 20 interviews now at Nomos. The difference between the men and the women is shocking. Guys coming in with 2 years experience asking for $250,000. Women coming in with 10 years of experience asking for 100. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
Wow.
Yeah. So, okay. So Andrea, try and keep this one contained. What was your career path to your current position? Maybe talk about the last few roles, or if you changed your industry. I'd be curious to hear about that.
Yep, that's probably in line with not knowing what I wanted to be. Obviously, wanted to travel, wanted to incorporate foreign languages. So first that was, I'm going to go to travel, right? It's gonna have it all. And I did 12 years in travel, then moved into project management, where I stayed for a few years before I then pivoted to the agile coach. So I've tried and tested a few areas.
Like I said earlier, I had started programming when I was about 9, just because I was forced to through school. And then it just kind of became a fun pastime, kind of like crossword puzzles or something like that. Not anything where I considered a serious career aspiration, And then, I mentioned I wanted to be a doctor. So then I didn't get into medicine straight out of high school. So I had to do an undergraduate degree, closed my eyes, picked a degree. I closed my eyes and had the science section in my hand because I figured I wouldn't be good at anything else besides science. And I started out in molecular biotechnology. And then about 1.5 years through, I realized I wasn't a huge fan of physical chemistry. And then switched over to computer science because that was the only thing that was going to give me the grades to get into medicine. Because I knew I'd been coding for so long, that was like second nature to me. So then I got the grades, then I got into medical school after working for about 6 months in the tech industry, which I enjoyed, but I never thought it was going to be my future, and then went to medical school and ended up dropping out after a few months due to personal reasons, and came back to Sydney and worked for ThoughtWorks, which was really, that was a hugely pivotal time in my career. I got sent to India for 6 weeks to learn Agile, and that cemented something that I had learned about Scrum 2 years prior. I didn't really understand, because my boss in my first job that I only did for 6 months, he brought to us the idea of Scrum in 2006. And we all looked at him like, what are you talking about? What is this football thing? I said, I don't know anything about football. Anyway, so ThoughtWorks was very pivotal for me. And, I met my best friend there, and she's been huge for me in my career, and she's like a role model for me. And then I guess after about a year there, I wanted to go back to medical school because I just couldn't get it out of my mind. And still these days, I don't want to go back and be a doctor anymore, but I realize I'm very interested in health and just that whole side of things. And then now with the pandemic, I have been doing things that are sort of related, adjacent to it in tech. And yeah, I think there's something deep inside of me that's that really, really cares about health. And maybe it's because I had a really poor health when I was a child. And I've had to also deal with health problems, as an adult as well. And so circling back, I tried to get back into medical school for 2 or 3 more years. And I just thought, no, I'm stuck right now. I need to do something else with my life. And like you, Andrea, I thought, what else do I want to do? Oh, I like to travel. So I thought I'll go to America, because apparently that's where people in technology go to. I'd never gone to America before. And so I just applied for this company called Amazon. And I didn't know Amazon, back then either. I just went to their website and I thought, oh, their website doesn't look very good. I guess I can help them out a little bit. And this was before, Amazon hadn't launched in Australia. So then I applied to go there, and then I went to Seattle, and that was very pivotal for me as well. Just, living in another country, naively, I expected to learn nothing except tech, but that's not really what happened. So yeah, I was there for 6.5 years.
Thank you both. Andrea, does the culture that you spoke about at the top of this, you talked about Germany, does that culture have different expectations for boys and girls?
I would probably, I think I should pass on this question, because certainly when I was there, but I haven't lived there in like 16 years, so I don't know what it's like now.
Sure. Well, the question was, does the culture that you grew up in, so culture is a function of time as well, right? Does the culture you grew up in did it have different expectations for boys and girls?
Yeah, absolutely. At the time it was, expected that, actually, yes, I remember a story. So up to obviously men were expected, to have a well-earning job, highly regarded, go into something like banking, architects, engineers, stuff like that. They were kind of promoted more and, pushed into that position. Whereas even in like my own family, up to the age of 16, I had never even considered going to university. It was just always clear that I would go and work in a hotel somewhere or in a restaurant, just something, wait until obviously, or possibly, a man came along. I don't know what the plan was, but and the reason I didn't do that was because at the age of 16, we had a psychologist come into the school. And when I told them that, I'm going to drop out and I'm just going to go work in a hotel, they just looked at me, and they were the first ones to say, but why on earth would you do that? You know, you've got like top marks on everything, you know, you must not waste this. So like they planted the seed and everything went really quickly from there. But yeah, so that was, you know, females were expected to either marry, have kids, and most of my friends have done that, and then just choose a job that would tie them over until that happened.
I I echo a lot of what Andrea just spoke about, and I guess it was kind of confusing because I was expected to get 100%. You know, if I came home with 92%, it's like, where is the other 8%? But then I had other people in the community telling me, oh, you don't need to be too educated. You know, I'm still less educated than both my parents. They both have 2 degrees. But yeah, it was a confusing time for me because, but I guess it didn't really matter in the end for me because I did have a really, I don't know what it was like the universe or something, but I kind of said no to what anybody was telling me because I just really wanted to be a doctor at that time. It didn't matter if people said, well, you're a girl, you don't need to be a doctor. You're a woman, you don't need to be a doctor. You can just find a doctor. And yeah, my family background, it was interesting because they said, no, you can't date anyone and you can't wear makeup. And then up until the age of 18, and then at 19, they said, hey, how come you don't have a boyfriend? Like it just switched real quick. It was confusing. But yeah, the occupation or the profession that I was going for was never confusing to me because that came internally somehow.
Thank you very much. What are your thoughts on how we might further women's rights and gender equality? You can talk about work or outside of work. What do we need to start doing?
Yeah, I think there's a few things, but I'll say a couple that come to mind is that everyone needs to stand up when they hear something, not just women. I often feel like the police and, saying, hey, look, that saying that kind of thing makes some people feel unsafe. And I don't want to be the only one saying it all the time. It gets tiring. And stand up in public forum, and say it. Don't just call it out. You don't need to be nasty about it or make the person feel humiliated. But I think it's important for that message and that feeling of inclusion to be known in a public forum. And to know that there are people that will have your back, that's one. And then another thing I think that can be done is, there's a whole, in terms of hiring and recruiting, there's a whole thing around culture fit, and when we talk about culture fit, if especially, I guess, in software engineering, most of the teams that I've been on have been all male except for me. And so I'm not going to influence the culture as much as my colleagues. So if we want there to be real equal gender representation in the industry, then there needs to be a lookout for culture additions. And yeah, people who are going to open our minds and expand our idea of culture, not just fit into what is existing.
Thank you. Andrea?
Yes, thank you. I agree with a lot of that. I mean, we need to, lead by example and speak up, but we can't be the only ones doing it all the time. And I think it needs to be public in a certain way to have the desired effect, if that's in the shape of, like groups where people can, I don't know, have like a backbone to regroup and then just find support. What that looks like exactly, I'm not sure, but it definitely, it needs to be more widespread and kind of gather momentum. I don't think otherwise it's gonna do enough, really.
Thank you. Okay, so on to the last couple of questions then. Andrea, this one is for you. As an immigrant to Australia, has anything surprised you about gender differences here compared to Germany?
I found it a lot more accepting here, like in terms of people are more polite and will usually look out for other people, whether that's men or women. I just felt more heard over here and considered, whereas in Germany I found that it was very how would I say, competitive, and people will step over other people, and that's both men and women, and that's not the case here. So that's I found that amazing. So.
Thank you. Candace, we talk about purpose a lot here. What's your purpose?
To throw parties, just to bring joy to others and to create an environment where the proliferation of joy is possible, which sometimes that bit's not that fun. That's the part that can feel like I'm being the police. But I think in order to feel joy, you need to feel safe first.
Thank you very much. Andrea, what's your purpose?
I was just thinking how to word it. My purpose, I think deep down, is to show people how to love themselves. And that ties into exactly what Candace said. And I know while I think it's my purpose, but say other people, make people show them how to love themselves just by being themselves, right? They're not intentionally doing it, but if you can speak to someone or treat someone in a way that they know I can ask for this, I have the right to say these things and have an opinion and not be, treated this or that way. I think that's a big step, that they can become comfortable with themselves and then obviously start speaking up, be a bit more, just maybe not even content, but definitely on the way. So yes, that's me.
Thank you. You've kind of both organically answered some of my other questions, which is really lovely. And that's fine, because I'm happy if we stop soon. I suppose the last couple of questions, Candace, I'll put this to you. What kind of world do you wish for the next generation of women?
One in which they can be themselves and still find success and still find acceptance as they move through the world. One in which they feel safe. And I guess I think about that for, women, and like also including, non-binary people as well. yeah, that's the world I hope for. And also a world in which kindness and generosity and gentleness is not seen as weak.
I think that I would like to see a world where, see a world without competitiveness. That when we think, in order to succeed, in order to survive, I must throw other people under the bus, or there's no competition. I don't need to be better than anyone else to be successful or to survive or have more friends than this person. So I wish that would go away. And also the what's it called, prejudice against, say for example, non-binary people. It's just based on fear, I think. And if people would actually be willing to be more open, I think that would go away. I wish people would be more open. Doesn't mean they need to change themselves, but just accept other people.
Do you have any final thoughts to share? Do you have any thoughts on how this process was for you?
I really enjoyed it. I was super nervous. Like I said to you, I don't like being, interviewed, looked at, scrutinized, and I was worried I might feel like that and just, feel intimidated. But thank you. You did that. Perfect.
Still dislike listening to myself talk. Working on that one. But I just enjoyed this opportunity, especially to meet you, Andrea.
I'm so grateful for all three of you. You make my life really beautiful, and you make working at Nomos really beautiful. Thank you for your incredibly transparent answers and your endlessly open hearts. I'm really just so happy you're here. That's all I will say. Thank you.
Thank you.